Welcome to In Her Voice. My name is Kelly Covert, and I am passionate about helping women live authentically by listening to their inner voice. Get ready to be inspired by women of all walks of life that have set aside their should-bes and not good enoughs and are standing in their true voice, the voice of wisdom that each and every one of us has inside. Hello, everyone. You are listening to episode 14 of In Her Voice. My name is Kelly Covert, and I am your host and guide as we talk to women of all walks of life about what it means and what it feels like to connect with and live by their inner voice. So I am so excited about this interview today. I have Samantha Livingstone on the podcast with me. She is an Olympic Gold Medalist. She is a coach. She is a mother of 4. Yes, I said 1, 2, 3, 4 girls. And I found her because a friend of mine posted a link of her website on their Facebook. And I thought, that looks interesting. I'm going to go check it out. And when I popped onto her website, I thought to myself, this is my soul sister. I just resonated with every single thing that she had on her website. And I'm so excited to bring her here to share her wisdom with you guys. And some of the things we talked about were her journey from being an Olympic gold medalist to understanding who she really was underneath all of the titles, underneath all of the accolades. And that's really, really interesting to me. We talk about how perfectionism came up in that journey for her and how she has really been able to move past perfection into this idea of worthy now. But my favorite part of our conversation was when we talked about how to balance achieving with worthiness and how to tell the difference between perfectionism and healthy striving. And this is something that I really think a lot about in my daily life because I do have goals. I still am a high achiever, but I want to make sure that I'm doing that for the right reason. And Samantha really shares a lot of wisdom and stories and insight into the difference between those two. So sit back and enjoy. Turn the volume up if you're in the car because you are not going to want to miss a single word of my interview with Samantha Livingstone. Samantha, I am so excited to have you, a fellow Georgia Bulldog, here on the In Her Voice podcast. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm truly honored, really.
Yeah, it is going to be so fun. Samantha and I were talking before we hit the record button about how I found her website through Amber Lillestrom, who has been a guest on this podcast also. And I started looking through it. I just clicked on it. I was like, oh, this person looks interesting. And it was like we're like sisters ripped apart at birth or something.
I felt the same way when I was on your website. I'm like, oh my gosh, she gets me. Yes. Yeah.
So I'm really excited to give you this opportunity to share your wisdom and your story with our listeners today. And I wanted to start at what would seem to be the peak. And that is you're standing on top of the Olympic podium, first place, gold medal around your neck in Sydney, Australia. And tell me what was going through your head at that moment and the moments to follow.
Yes. So this is the moment that I dreamt about as a little girl since I have vividly remember like 8 years old, dreaming and wishing upon a star. I would really actually do this. I would look out my window and find the first star and wish to know what it felt like to be standing atop that podium. And so for so long, I visualized it and just imagined what it would feel like. And so to stand there with my childhood idol. So I grew up idolizing Jenny Thompson, and she was actually, I was the leadoff leg first to go in the water, and she was last. And so to stand up there with her and two other women who I admire so greatly was sort of like, is this real life? Like there was this feeling of, it was really surreal. Like, is this it? Like, is this what it's supposed to feel like? Is this how what am I supposed to be doing right now? Should I be crying? Like all of these things were going through my mind because up until that point, and even in my race, I was just me. I was, swimming my race, a race I have swam. I mean, I can't even count how many times, thousands of times. And so up until that point, all my experience with the podium at the Olympic stage at that level was just what I saw on television. And then prior to my race, we swam on day 5, was watching my teammates stand atop the podium. So standing there was like, holy cow, we did this. Like, we did this. Like, it was sort of just like, is this real? So standing atop, I was also simultaneously, there was a lot swirling in my mind, simultaneously wondering if my mom could see me, because the crowd was actually record breaking at the time because swimming is so big in Australia. It was the largest crowd to ever watch the Olympics live. There were 17,000 people. And that night was a really big night because their hometown hero was swimming her race, and she was actually who I swam against on the opening leg. And so, there was just electric atmosphere. And so my mom was in the nosebleeds. I didn't know where she was at the time. And there she was. I'm not kidding. I turned to my left and I could see her on the banister and I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she's right there. So that was a really cool moment to be able to see her and then to watch the flag raise. And I had been on top of a podium before, but never when they raised our American flag and listened to our national anthem, which was the moment that I dreamt about for so long. So it was this swirling of, is this it? Like, is this what it's supposed to feel like? And oh my gosh. And should I be crying? And oh my gosh, my legs are tired because I just finished swimming and we didn't get to warm down. And then, oh my gosh, there's my mom. So it was a whole mix of emotion at that moment. Yeah. And then to follow is, I could talk for days about that. So immediately following, you do your parade around the pool deck, and that is where it's just like you have media lined up all along the deck and you're stopping to take pictures. And I think after that, when we were able to go back and see our family really quickly, there was a meeting area that they only allowed family of the swimmers to go into. And so I got to see my coach and my family members that were there. So it was my mom and her sister, my aunt and my cousin and my grandmother. And that night, this is actually a really cool story. My grandfather passed. He served our country, and he passed when I was 14. And it was really sudden and really tragic. And he was such a huge part of my life. And so the night that I swam, they actually opened his American flag that was laid over his body when he was put to rest, and had his rosary beads. And I could feel that. It was really, I didn't know that they had done that till I was meeting them in that greeting area. And then, of course, the tears start flowing. My mom was like, hot mess. And I think it was still surreal for me at that moment. Like, it was like a big deal to everyone around me. And I was being treated differently by media and everyone around me, right? But it was like, I'm still me. Like, it was this sort of the beginning of this interesting disconnect between that me underneath and like the world was swirling around me. And so then we went from there. It was a really quick hello and hugs and, seeing the flag that was opened and the rosary beads and my grandmother and all of that. And then being able to, from there, you're followed by a drug tester. And so we went down to the drug testing room. And that's when I actually got to sit with my teammates and we were just talking about what just happened, right? Soaking it all in and laughing and, can you believe we did this? And at the same time, there's this sort of, you sort of exhale, because the United States has dominated swimming, really for as long as it existed. And they make sure, they meaning the USA Swimming and the USOC, they make sure you're very well aware of our history and standing in the world. And so beforehand in training camp, you watch video footage of previous Olympics and just knowing like this is what you're representing and this is the legacy that you're carrying on and you're now part of this. And so there's sort of this expectation that as United States will bring home the gold. Like it was it's what, you look at 96 when the girls crushed it. And so it was like, okay, now it's our turn to carry this tradition on. And so there was a moment of like, exhaling too, that happened in the drug testing room. And then from there, I mean, there's so many stories I can share with you, but I think that it was really a whirlwind for the next 24, 48 hours, going on to TV and doing media, and just sort of, I think that was the first moment after that race when I was exposed to the magnitude of the Olympics, because before you swim, it's just another meet. It literally is like showing up at a pool, and the deck looks very familiar. I mean, that's what national and international meets look like. You're hanging out with your teammates and doing what you do. So it's like just like every other day. And then after you swim with all of the media and the fans, and it was the first time I had seen all of that. So I was like, oh, whoa, there's a whole nother world out here. And just being able to just taking that all in. So yeah, so that sort of captures that 24-hour period.
I don't know a soul who doesn't love the Olympics. Like, what is it about the Olympics that just is like, makes everyone feel like it's possible to be a superhero? Yeah. Even in your dreams, and for those dreams to come true, that dream that you've been wishing upon a star for so many years, I think there comes this point of like, okay, what's next? And
yes.
I think that's what I'm really interested in, because, you said, how old were you? 18?
18. Mm-hmm.
So you're 18 years old. I don't know about you, but when I was 18, I did not know as much as I know now.
Oh no.
And I'm really interested to understand that transition of living this dream for 10 years and so much of your childhood, and then having done it, but then like, what happens next?
Yes. And this is, I feel like, my soul's work, if I'm being totally honest. I think that shift from, I'm still me, and now I have this title, this title to my name, and it changes the way people see you. And then you're like, okay, exactly what you're saying. Like, okay, what next? And for me, the way that it timed out, I had deferred my admissions. I graduated high school when I was 17. And so I deferred my admissions. I started out at the University of Michigan before transferring to Georgia. So for me, it was this massive transition to college. And so that was really tricky for me, because the Summer Olympics in Sydney were in September. And so the school had started. And so I was going in as a freshman. So I was kind of distracted by that. It was a really big life change. As anyone who goes off to college, right? It's a lot. And so coming off of, I stayed for closing ceremonies, which was a big deal because that meant I missed more time in school. And then I, arrived. I was home for one day in Massachusetts, and then went out to school. And I think it was really layered. That was probably one of the lowest times in my life. This idea and concept of post-Olympic depression is a real thing. There are a lot of us who experience it, and it's not something that's often talked about, because beforehand you have this roadmap, you have your goals you're working toward. Everything is really regimented, really structured, and it's just your blinders are on and you're driving. And so when that is done, the support's gone, right? Like you have at the Olympic Games, you have a manager for every tiny thing. You have your PR person, you have your coaches, you have the support staff, the massage therapist. The team around you is just, you're supported in every way you could possibly imagine. And then you're on your own. And at least that's how it felt. And I don't know now, because I've kind of talked to people who were, some of the swimmers that were in Rio, but we didn't get into details. But there aren't really supports in place to transition you from that. You just sort of go back into your home environment, and you're different. Like you're still the same. That you underneath is what I talk a lot about. Underneath all of that stuff, right? All of the noise, all of the titles and accomplishments and achievements, that you is still in there. And so, I didn't know how to be honest with you. It's like, do they know what I've done? Do they not know what I've done? My teammates did. But then on campus, there was a lot of media and a lot of press on the campus of Michigan for the Olympians who were coming home. And so as a freshman, it was just this interesting place. And on top of that, layered for me was the fact that I actually swam in Sydney with an injured shoulder. I had torn a tendon in my shoulder about a year before, actually. And the pains came and went, but I really, at that point, had no choice. For me, it was like I've spent this much time of my life gunning for this dream, and I'm this close. It's just, I can't have surgery now kind of thing. It was just put out of my mind. So that shows you how powerful endorphins are. Right?
No doubt.
So
No doubt.
yeah, so pictures of me, it's funny looking back, I have like one arm up because I couldn't put my other arm up, but I didn't feel the pain then. But when all the high and all the busyness and all of the media faded, and I was left in this, not left, but in this new environment, when the lights faded, it was like, oh my gosh, you talk about like, who am I in this world? And how should I be? And how should an Olympian act? And what should an Olympian look like? And there was just so much on top of this injured athlete piece that actually pulled me out of the water. So within 2 months, the doctors were like, you cannot swim. You have to rest your shoulder because otherwise it can cause permanent damage. And so that was really challenging. That was a really, really challenging time for me.
What's really interesting to me about this, and I consider myself to be a recovering perfectionist, and I'm by no means an Olympic gold medal winner, but I feel like for people, even if you haven't won the gold medal or haven't been in this position of fame and media and all of the lights on, even as sort of regular people, regular women who strive to accomplish things, we understand that feeling, that feeling of I nailed it. And then now what do I do to fill up that space of that accomplishment, of feeling proud of myself, of knowing that I'm good enough? How do I top it? It's almost like you have to top it. I would like to dive into that a little bit and sort of get into this place of like how you were able to find that voice within that said, Samantha, even if you never get in the pool again, you're enough.
It was a battle. It was really, so I actually, the perfectionist piece, this is when it reared its head for me because of course, right, it takes the wheel when we're most vulnerable. And I think that's true of the inner critic, whether it's perfection or whatever that inner critic is for you, you know, for women, men. I mean, I think it exists in all of us. And so that was sort of when I was out of the water, I was really just grasping and trying to control whatever I could. And so it ended up being with food. And my coach at the time was, you know, he basically said, there's this guy I want you to talk to. You know, he's over in this building, you know, I think you need to go. And I was just like, what? Like, I don't need that. I mean, I was really defensive and like, I just don't need that. And that guy, his name is Greg Harden, and he changed my life. He helped me find that voice again. He helped me to separate because at the time I couldn't, and I didn't know how to. I didn't even know it was a separate voice. That little girl who was wishing on a star, that voice got really entangled with perfection and really drowned out, especially when I was out of the water and, you know, trying to deal with my shoulder and the transition of being new in this new title and all of this stuff that was on my plate. He worked with me. So I went there every week. I showed up. He's amazing. And anyone that's worked with him, he's worked with Tom Brady's talked about him a little bit. And he's worked with Desmond Howard. He worked with Michael Phelps when Michael followed. He was at Michigan after I left. And he's like the man behind the scenes there. He's so powerful. And he's really funny. I'm laughing because he wouldn't take my crap. Like there's just no room for it, right? And I was tough. Like I think there's a part of that edge that you need to be successful in a really competitive environment. And so he cracked that. So I've always known, even at my lowest point, that I don't need to do this alone. And that really I just have this intrinsic desire to grow. And so I knew he could help me. So I just had to get out of my own way. But through his homework assignments, he sent me out to a public school outside of Detroit. And I was like, I can't eat, like I was struggling to get out of bed. I mean, I was up with so much pain in the middle of the night with my shoulder, and I was just like a hot mess. And I'm like, how am I supposed to pour into anybody when I'm like this, right? His wisdom, it changed my life. Getting out of, off of campus into a classroom, working with kids and pouring into them, actually, it just lit up this part of me that loves to help, and seeing their aha moments and just being able to nurture them actually helped me to heal. So he was smart and he was really good with me in helping me to navigate all my BS. And that, I honestly believe, our weekly meetings for 2 years, for the 2 years that I was at Michigan. And on top of that, at one point, this was his sense of humor, but there was purpose behind it. He's like, you need to go see somebody else to tackle this eating thing. We're going to tackle all of this stuff here, and we're going to get this under control with another. She was a nutritionist therapist. So yeah. So at one point I was actually working with 2 different people to help heal.
Well, and I think it's so important to highlight that, because as women, I feel like we wear this sort of badge of honor. Like, I can do it myself. I don't have to ask for help. If I ask for help, that means I'm not good enough, or that I'm weak, or that there's something wrong with me.
Yes.
I love that you are vulnerable enough with us to share that this journey was something that you needed help with.
Yes. That's why I do the work that I do. And I'm sure I don't want to speak for you, but I feel that that's part of why you do what you do as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. I don't want women walking around feeling like I did for so many years, totally successful on the outside and feeling like a failure on the inside. And that doesn't feel good. And that's kind of what I wanted to ask you about. You talked about this inner critic, this internal voice that had gotten entangled and was so much louder than your inner wisdom. When you listen to that critic, and maybe, I don't know about you, but sometimes every now and then I catch myself, even today, listening to that. Like, it comes back, and it if you're not careful, it just noses its way in there without you even realizing it. What do you feel like when you listen to that? How does that show up for you in your body or in your emotional experience?
Yeah. So you're bringing me back to, so there's another piece of being on that podium, and it didn't come that night. It was the next morning. And this is really, I'm glad that you tap into this, because this is a powerful part of my story that I was really afraid to share for a very long time. The day before I swam, actually, I stepped on a scale. Like, I don't know what compelled me to do that at the time. It was this critic. But I know now. I'm not, at the time I didn't know. I just stepped on the scale and I lost it. This was the day before the biggest race of my entire life. And I just emotionally broke down, and I have log books that I still actually have, where I was logging my workouts and tracking my food, because there's a real, that's necessary to a certain degree, right? To have information and data when you're competing at that, like, such a high level. Like, every detail really matters, right? So that journal had transformed. I can see it now. Like, it transformed into, like, you could see the critic growing louder and louder and louder. And that day, the morning before I raced, was screaming at me. It's the same sort of feeling that I still get today when it creeps in on me, right? It's like you said, it doesn't necessarily disappear. So I often refer to it as the wall of stuff, like, insert expletive, right? And we all have one. And so when I get hit, it's like a wave. Like, I feel like I'm filled with cement, and the dialogue inside my head just turns really dark. And it's like the same world around me, but all of a sudden, through this lens, it's just everything's terrible, right? You talk about not enough. So I was feeling like completely unathletic and about to swim my race. And so I, through a phone call with, my boyfriend at the time, back to the US on our little cell phones. This was before cell phones were really a thing. He was just like, he was able to talk to that part of me, that me inside, and like, I was able to hear that and see that. I didn't know at the time they were two different voices, but he was able to tap into that and remind me, like, you've done this before, like, you can do this, you have your race coming up tomorrow. And that conversation, I was able to then shift out of that space and get back into the mentality that allowed me to swim as well as I did. But the day after, it was that same voice came creeping, and it's like, you're not, you don't look athletic enough. You don't, all these not enough. So insert blank enough, right? You're just not enough. Or after the interview, it was like, you should have said this, insert all the shoulds, right? I didn't say this perfectly. And so when that critic gets loud, and that's what Greg and I worked on a lot, was just basically extracting that voice and saying, like, this is a separate voice. This is not me inside. This is the voice that I need to be witness to and not give power to. And so I can actually feel it a lot sooner now. So that wall of stuff, I like to say that we crashed into it. So I currently work with a therapist, totally open about it. And I really feel like everyone can benefit. And this is she used this as an analogy for me, and I love it. So I credit her for this too. But this wall where you come crashing into it. And so in my body, I feel like I'm filled with cement. I can feel my jaw clenching and just snap. Like, I get really irritable. Like, I just, like, nothing. And sometimes even my clothes don't feel right. I'm just, like, uncomfortable in my skin. And then I start to see messes, like, in my house. Every little thing is a mess. And it's that lens, right? It's like this inner critic's just took the wheel, and I'm buried underneath all the noise of it, right? I'm in there, but buried. And so now I'm able to see. So when we smash into this wall, it's not the same place every time. I think we have an opportunity every time we hit it to build resiliency and, strengthen our skill set so that we can climb out and be stronger. And so it's not like we're never going to hit it again, right? Because for a while I'm like beating myself up because the voice is back. It's just that we grow stronger and are able to see it coming potentially. And if we don't see it coming, we're able to see it sooner. And so that's sort of where I feel that I am now, is that it doesn't go away, right? I had this awesome conversation with 14 beautiful souls last night in really intimate setting. And of course, this morning you have that vulnerability hangover where the critic's like, I'm going to come on in, right? And so that's what I've been. I've been this, I love Kristen Neff's work on self-compassion. It's transformed my life.
Me too.
Yes.
She's that book, whatever. Right? I'll put a link to it in the show notes for you guys. It's fantastic.
And so that compassionate observer, right? Isn't it so powerful? So that's, So and when I'm in the flow, I like to say, and just me and tuning in and honoring me, sometimes it takes work. Like, sometimes I have to do certain things to get myself back there. And other times I just have to surrender. Like, so it just depends sort of, I guess, where I am. But being outside in nature really helps me, grounds me.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that goes right into what I was going to ask you about. What are some of the practices that you have learned to give yourself to do to really build those skills to separate yourself from your inner critic?
Yes. So Kristen Neff's work was just, I was listening to it and I was like, I listened to her Audible, and I also did a course with her and Brene Brown, who's another one of my I'm like an ultimate fan.
Oh my God. Like, can we just stop and pause and say, like, she is my idol, if I'm allowed to say that. Like, I've read everything that she's ever written. She's wonderful. And I'll link to some of her stuff for you guys. Although my listeners know how much I love Brene Brown, so this is not news to them at all. So anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No. So I think that, oh man, it's been this, I think, self-compassion. That was my word of the year last year. And I like to take, instead of a resolution, I like to pick one word and sort of just continue to come back to that. So with the wall and that, like that analogy, it's sort of like a spiral staircase, right? I think part of building resiliency is understanding my brain. Like I have a master's in science education. Like that's where, like, that's my, like, my I love it. I taught anatomy and physiology. So I love learning about how our brains work. And so when I, in through therapy and my work with Greg and my work with my therapist now, it's like, I want to know what's happening. And I also realize that I don't always need to know why I got there, like why the critic's loud or why it's happening, where I used to get stuck in that. I now just notice it. And I really let it, this is powerful. So opening the door, this is my therapist said to me, like, because I also cope with PTSD, it's on my wall. And she's like, you can stand at the door all day long, at the front door, but you're going to miss out on the party, right? And the analogy is like, I can put all my energy into holding the door shut and trying to keep the critic out, and all my energy is focused there, and I can miss out on my life. Or I can open the door, notice it, and let it out the back door without engaging, right? So I can still be fully present. And that is what I do. That's really what I come back to in self-care. When I don't take care of myself, my first go-to is like, where am I on sleep? Have I been sleeping? Because if I'm lack of sleep, that inner critic is just, it's opportunistic. So it's going to, if I'm really tired, it's going to start to grow louder. And making sure that I do my workouts. My workouts are my 30 minutes a day for me to just pour into myself and release all those awesome chemicals to my brain and help me feel like I'm moving forward. And also I've added now these last 2 years, yoga. Do you do yoga?
It's funny. I go in phases with yoga. So I will do yoga like many times a week for months at a time, and then I won't do it at all. But for me, my main practice is journaling. And that's something for me that really gets me back into that quiet place where I can connect with my inner voice and let go. Like you said, opening the door and letting that inner critic through.
Yes.
You're not trying to keep it out. It's there, but just acknowledging that it's not you.
Yes.
Like, that's not Samantha. That's not Kelly. And having that awareness around it, I find very powerful.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And so in small things like taking like a hot bath with reading a book that I'm just, or putting on Audible and like we live on a mountain. So we just I'll do a loop around our, it's not a hill, it's a mountain. So we do a loop to get the energy flowing that way. Yes. I think just the self-care piece is huge. Even something as simple as like, where am I on water? Like, have I taken the time to eat? Have I taken the time to drink water today? And I've just started to get into meditation, and I really resisted because
I have a funny story about that too. You tell yours and then I'll tell mine.
Yeah, no, I'm not good at this. Like, what? Until I was like, oh, your mind does wander. That's okay. Like, give myself permission,
Yeah.
So I think just being open to trying. Now I'm really into energy work and meditation. I really feel like there's so much power there. So,
yeah. Well, meditation is funny. I think it's particularly hard for people who are perfectionists because
you can't do it perfectly.
No, we want to follow the rules.
Exactly.
And it's supposed to look a certain way. And for me, when I very first started meditating, this was years ago, I didn't like the word meditate. And so I called it many other things because I think a piece of it was I didn't feel like I was officially quote unquote meditating.
Doing it right.
So
right.
I couldn't call it that. And I called it many different names for a year. And then finally I was like, you know what? This is really meditating.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think sometimes we just have to get over ourselves and open ourselves up to a new experience that we don't know what it's supposed to feel like, and be okay with that.
Exactly. Yes. That goes into that life. So I say, this life of, all or nothing. It's good, it's bad, it's right, it's wrong. So I've entered this space by letting go of perfection, really, is been the driver, hugely important for me in finding lasting joy. Because the moments like being on top of the podium, it brings you this momentary joy, or, a promotion or a new title or whatever it might be. You hit that goal and it's like this blast, you're really proud of accomplishing that. And then when the lights fade, it's life. Life is unfolding in front of you. And if it's just this constant push for perfection, then you lose the ability to soak all of that in. And so I've been able to move to this place of the mess. I say that all the time. Like, I found beauty in the mess. Like, the mess is the beauty, right? Like, that's life. And going for that. So like staying away from, quote, meditating, or even calling it that, like feeling like you need permission almost to call it that, right? It's totally that all or nothing thing, like that right or wrong world. And there's just so much life. So I don't say the gray anymore. It's like a life in full color, right? It's just, there's so much beauty in there. Yeah. That I've just been witness to now. Like, that's just been opened up for me. So yes, I'm so grateful for that.
Something that I have been thinking about a lot lately, and I'm really interested to hear your opinion on this as a high achiever who also does not practice perfectionism anymore. Mm-hmm. I could call myself recovering perfectionist because it comes back every now and then.
It's a daily choice. That's what I say.
Yeah. But like, how do you balance out the idea of worthiness where, you know, we're worthy because we are who we are. It's not based on things that we do or accomplishments. So balancing that out with the desire for healthy achievement, with the desire to reach new goals.
Yes. So this is powerful. For a long time, I thought that if you move away from perfection and you sidestep or step off of that, then you won't achieve anything, right? Like that you'll be done, you'll be washed up, you'll go soft. Like, it was just the story. And that's a lie. That's a really powerful lie that perfection tells us, so that we stay on that continual cycle of just try harder, right? Go for perfection. And so I found now, I think this was what I was sharing with the girls last night. Like, there's a time and a place. And so I have huge goals. Like, I have really big dreams, and I have not let that go. But what I've let go is the rigidness around it, and recognize at the same time that there's so much, there's something more powerful than me at work here, and trusting that I'm where I'm supposed to be and the universe is going to take care of me. And I then, so for example, when I plan out my schedule, it's like I purposefully block chunks of time with nothing. And I purposely say, like, these are my work blocks, right? So I'm going to work during this time. And if something comes up, something comes up. But that's where I, when I'm in the zone, I'd crank it up. And it's not about being perfect. It's this healthy striving, really. It's like work I love and work I enjoy, and I'm doing it for me versus doing it because I'm afraid of what people will think, right? I mean, that's the root of it.
Yes.
And allowing myself time and space to be and to live and to just let things kind of unfurl. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, it does completely. And I think, like, you nailed it. Are we making a choice to do something based out of fear? And that fear can look like a lot of things. It can look like because we think we should be doing that, because people expect us to do that, because if we don't do that, then we're not good enough, or blah, 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 whatever. Or are we making that choice because it's something that our soul is asking us to do?
And I think that that's where it's so critical. Before you even know what your soul's calling is, you have to be able to quiet the noise. So I think there's the different layers. Like, you have to be able to quiet that inner chatter and the outer noise, and be able to have boundaries that, and the confidence and courage to say, like, nope, you're not on my short list. Not, I'm going to let that go. To then tune in to listen to what pulls you, like what just lights you up. For me, I feel so deeply that I get tears in my eyes. So on my drive out to the school that I was, where the girls were for my talk last night, I was like literally like listening to music, and my tears were flowing. And I'm like, this is how I know that I'm totally in flow, and this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And when I find myself very similarly to the inner critic, where I feel like I'm spinning, like, I've got to get this done. I got to get this done. I've got to get this done. And I'm really tied to that to-do list. And I'm starting to feel my productivity tied to that to-do list. And then I'm like, okay, wait a minute. I'm getting pulled, and this is starting to turn into perfection and not what I want to be doing.
Mm-hmm. I love that. That's such a good description. Thank you for that, because I think that a big piece of, as women, starting to step into this knowingness that we have everything that we need right inside of us is people like you explaining what it feels like. So it's almost like we're creating a translation. Like we're helping people to understand that when you feel this, that it's perfectionism rearing its head. It's, chronic overachieving or the not good enoughs or whatever it is that's coming up. And so what you're doing in your work and here today on the podcast is so important. We need to hear it. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'm so grateful for this connection too.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, so Samantha, why don't you let our listeners know how they can find out more about you, connect with you online and all of that fun stuff?
Yeah. So I'm so excited and proud, right? You talk about perfection. So this is another area, right? When creating this sacred space on the internet where it would try to rear its head, and it's like, you could feel yourself getting all wound up and it's like, release it. Because I think a lot of times if we wait till we're ready, like, well, could you ever be ready with perfection to release it to the world?
No, because it's impossible. Right? It will never be perfect.
So I was like, so this was really big. It was, I created, so it's SamanthaLivingstone.com and you can connect with me there. And I also am on Instagram. And Facebook is really where it's at for me. That's my biggest platform is just Samantha Livingstone. But my website I'm very proud of it. I feel like it's me. It's, it is just, I was able to just really get in the flow with energy and take my time. And I feel like I felt very in sync when creating that space. So yes.
And
so
it's beautiful. I mean, and that's how I found you. Someone, Amber, posted the link and I clicked on it and I was like, it's gorgeous. It is you. And I feel that even though we've never met in person, that I know you. And I could feel that when I was on the website.
And the same for you. And I think it's so funny that we both are Georgia Bulldogs. Like that's such an interesting synchronicity, right?
Yeah.
But no, I remember, I felt the same. And I think that it's, so on the website, there's my roadmap to like living free. And I poured in, so much love and light into that as well on my 5 C's with perfection and just really like, talking about building that resiliency. So that is there for everyone. It's just a gift to the universe to who needs to hear it really. And identifying what it is. Cause for a long time, I didn't know it was perfection. I just thought it was my drive to achieve,
Yeah. And we're rewarded for that, handsomely in our society. And I think that that's part of the danger because we don't realize that we're there. Like you said, we don't realize that's what's holding us back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Samantha, as much as I would love to talk to you like all day long about this, we're going to have to like connect in person one day and it will be amazing. I just want to thank you for being here. And I want to take a moment to honor and acknowledge the woman that you are, for your willingness to share today with us, to be vulnerable, to remind us that we need to ask for help and that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm sure that we'll be talking again sometime soon.
Yes.
Talk to you later.
Okay. Thanks, Kelly.
Bye. Oh my gosh, you guys, wasn't that so good? I mean, to really hear someone who has gone through the journey of understanding the difference between perfectionism and worthiness and how that can really lead us to deeper and lasting joy in our real lives. Oh, it's amazing. And I just am so grateful that Samantha was able to articulate that so beautifully. And I hope that you guys got a lot out of that too. As you know, worthiness is something that I love to talk about. And my last podcast, episode 13, my last solo episode, was all about worthiness. So if you haven't listened to that, you definitely want to go head on over to kellycovert.com, hit the podcast tab, and make sure that you have listened to that one too. And while I'm talking about that podcast tab, I want to let you know that I set a really big, hairy goal for myself. And that is to get 100 ratings of In Her Voice on iTunes. And I set that goal, and then I thought to myself, well, I can't really do that. I can only ask people to help me. And so I am asking you right now, if you are loving the podcast, if you are really enjoying the interviews that I'm bringing to you and the topics that I'm talking about, please go leave a review on iTunes for me. And all you have to do is, like I said, head on right over to kellycovert.com, click on the podcast tab, and there will be a link to leave a review on iTunes right there. If you have an iPhone, you can do it right from your phone, but if you have an Android, you will have to do it on your computer. But I so appreciate you doing that for me. I want to let you know why I set the goal of 100. It wasn't so I could have 100 pats on the back, although I really do appreciate that. It is so more women can hear this message of worthiness, can hear this message of listening to your inner voice, can hear this message of you are enough right now. And I am so grateful for you. I'm so grateful for all of you, even if you can't do that. But the next time you have a quiet moment, maybe right before you're going to bed tonight, or when you're sitting down to watch your favorite Netflix show, after the kids have gone to bed, just pick up your phone, pick up your laptop, head on over to iTunes and leave a quick review and 5-star rating. And I would be so, so grateful to you. So thank you guys so much. And as always, I want you to know right in this moment that if you never do another thing, if you never have another accomplishment, if you never ever win a gold medal, and let's face it, most of us won't, you are worthy now. Have a great week, you guys.